Hello and welcome to Cruising and Musing. We have a bit of a different view for you today. This is Miss Eve, and Miss Eve is a ragdoll cat, and she has a litter of kittens. Um, of course, she chose right when I started recording to lay back down with her back to us where we can't see the babies. But she just had three babies, and we'll kind of lean forward and let you get a look at them. Hopefully, you'll be able to see. But the little ones are there, feeding, and mom's happy and purring. And dad was nearby, looking very smug about what he had done. But I thought you would enjoy kind of this view instead of just me driving in circles on the same streets again in Studio B. And, well, Studio B's AC is still shot, and I'm still waiting for Studio A's power steering to get fixed. Which is ironic considering, my video about how inexpensive and convenient it is to drive older cars, but sometimes things conspire to make you look like a fool. I still stand by the advice I gave. Even fixing both of these cars, it's going to be cheaper than a car payment by the time we're said and done with it. Um, but that's besides the point. Today, what I want to talk about was a story that was in the news a couple weeks ago, and I didn't talk about it then because I was trying to do some research and learn more about it, and I couldn't. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Be ready to give me some comments down below, then a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I am in this for an interaction because, you know, working as I do, I very rarely get to, interact with adults and have these conversations. Um, because I'm not going to talk to the kids about these sorts of things, the students rather. And I'd really like to, be able to have dialogue with grown adults about things that are needful and pressing. And, well, let's say that my own friend group has become something of a bit of an echo chamber for those who still have the time to, shit and shoot the breeze with me. So, without further ado, a few weeks ago, and this was about a week before the Don't Say Gay bill was passed, aka the Parental Rights in Education was passed, we had a young woman who was in her first year of teaching, and she was teaching art. And apparently, in her art classroom, and this is the way she told it to the news, in her art classroom, her students were having a conversation about the different sexualities and sharing what sexualities they had. And either the students were already previously aware of her being a pansexual, or she shared it with them at that time. And she had the students then make flags of their sexuality and put them on her door. And somebody was not happy about this, and admin came down, made her take the flags down, and she, threw them out in the recycling bin. She says she crumpled them. Like she was very much stressed in the news report that she crumpled the flags as she put them into the uh, recycling bin. There's Dad. He's come back to inspect his handiwork once more. And do pardon the newspapers. The birthing process is a bit of a mess, and the kittens are a little too small for me to be moving around a lot. So, we have the newspapers here for absorbency until they are a couple days old, and I can safely handle them and get, soft absorbent towels down in here and make this nursery much more hospitable. But I have found that the newspapers work best for this because of the disposability and the amount of bodily fluids going on when this process is ongoing, as it was at 3 a.m., because Miss Thing here just can't ever happen to give birth during the day. She always does it in 3 in the morning. Getting back to our news story, though. So, nothing wrong with the teacher being pansexual. Nothing wrong at all. Nothing wrong with the kids on their own time in the middle school level having a conversation about this. The kids having their own conversation, developmentally appropriate, whether we like to, say otherwise or not. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. Now, all I know is that this was middle school, so I don't know whether these were 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, or 13-year-olds. But I do know that as a teacher, I'm not engaging with those students in that conversation. I don't want a piece of it. If they're talking about it, I'm going to pretend like I'm deaf and let them work that out on their own, um, unless directly asked, and then I'm going to give no personal information and redirect them to get them back to work and hopefully end that conversation, because that's a conversation, in my opinion, and by my philosophy, that they should be having with their parents, not me. So, that being said, the fact that they knew this teacher was pansexual or that she shared them with it, that is definitely a choice I would have not have made. I would not say that was a fire and offense, but more of a you might not want to share as much as you do with the children talk, with the mentor teacher, or worst case, an administrator. But where this woman made her mistake was when she took what the kids were talking about and took it from being a student led conversation in her classroom to being a teacher led change in curriculum by having them draw the flags to represent their own sexualities. And then she took it a step further and she put those on the door. And I can just see now that, like the mortification of learning, of putting that personal information of the students out on the door like that. Um, because you don't know how the other kids are going to act. You don't know how people are going to respond. Maybe little Johnny has drawn his flag showing that he is gay, and now because you've put that information on your door for everyone to see, the less accepting student is going to be making a target of little Johnny, who otherwise would not have been out of the closet to that particular set of students, because there's a difference between kids sitting together and having a conversation with one group versus putting it on display for the entire school. And that's really where this teacher went wrong is, number one, she took what was a student-led discussion and turned it into the curriculum when the curriculum had nothing to do with her course. There's, she made it about exhibiting their art skill for making a flag, I guess, but, that's a stretch at best. Um, the content of the conversation had nothing to do with the content of her course as an art teacher. And thus, that's, where she really stepped over the line and made the mistake. But she is a first year teacher. And this, at the end of the day, this isn't a child got hurt. This isn't she put hands on a child. This isn't that she was, trying to groom the children. This was what I express is, like 90% of this is, um, how to express this. College campuses are very accepting of the LGBT community. They're very accepting in general of different viewpoints and everything else, unless you happen to be a, stalwart conservative or highly religious. Um, well, say highly religious and Christian. There seems to be, some sacrosanct thing if you are non-Christian and staunchly religious, where your faith's not an easy target. But if you're staunchly religious and Christian, you could be picked on. Um, from what my experience on observations on college campuses. But what I'm trying to express here, without throwing out too many things people can argue with me about, is that the college campus is much more liberal. These things are commonplace, commonly accepted. So I don't feel like this woman was really going out of her way to cross over the line, and probably thought that she was being accepting of her students and empowering them to by through this sharing exercise. Like I just people don't become teachers to hurt kids. I just feel like this is normal people don't become teachers to hurt kids. I feel like this is just one of those things like she let the warm fuzzies get a hold of her, and she forgot place and time. Like I feel like it was a very well meaning thing, and she was trying to be accepting and make the kids feel welcomed and accepted, and got carried away with that and crossed these lines. This is not a student was put in physical danger. This is not her deliberately trying to indoctrinate, as far as I can tell. Again, there's no information out there that I can find on if this was the first time she was stepped out of line. Now, if this is like the fifth offense and she had been corrected over and over and told not to do these things, that's different. Even for a first year teacher, you don't get to deliberately defy um, your administrators like that. I did my first year, and I was fired for it. And while I still think I did the right thing, that I knew that it was not going to end well for me. Um, and I'll add a little context to that later, but um, yeah, so I feel like, this was probably something that happened with the best of intentions. No harm was intended. It's a first year teacher. First year teachers are inexperienced. They're going to make mistakes. So I kind of feel like this should have been a learning experience for the teacher. Maybe have her write an apology letter to each of the students and each of their families, and give it to them, and, not have it be a form letter, but the actual handwritten letter individually for each one, for the parents who complained or the students who, participated. A reprimand, a don't do it again, you move on, and now next year you have a teacher who knows better, isn't going to do it, is more aware, more cautious, and, you still have an art teacher. Whereas with our student shortage or our teacher shortages, they might not have an art teacher there for the rest of the year, let alone next year when they have to replace her. There's some babies now that you can see. She's a good little mama cat. So yeah, that's my take on it. Is that, if this was a first time offense, or, even if she had made a couple of non unrelated minor mistakes prior to this is not something you fire a first year teacher for. Now, if this was a 5-year veteran teacher, they know better. If you feel you need to fire them for this, I still don't think it's a fireable thing, but you give them the reprimand, you make them do the thing. But yeah, so this is first year teacher that I feel like, from the impression I picked up, made a genuine mistake, didn't have any maliciousness in their intent. No child was harmed directly. We, don't know if some bully decided little Johnny had picked on down the line, but there was no maliciousness in this as far as I can tell. So this should have, been a reprimand, move on, not a you're fired. And that, I say that again as somebody who my students know very little about me. I'm not going to share those kinds of personal details with them, even if I walk up on them. If they try to engage me in that conversation, I'm going to refuse to engage in that conversation. That's just how I am. It's, that would be a conversation that I would reserve for close friends only. It's, I'm more of a private person on that matter. Look at these. Look at these babies crawling all over. Crawling all over their mama. So there's that. And part of why I'm stressing that she's a first year teacher is first year teachers are learning themselves. They're going to make mistakes. And when you're in your first year teacher, you're so busy trying to figure out what's going on for all the things they don't prepare you for in college that, you're bound to screw up sometime. And they really should be required to, when they hire a first year teacher, keep them on for 2 years. The first year while they learn how to be a teacher, and the second year so you can actually evaluate what kind of teacher they're going to be. But I myself, that, and, if you fire a first year teacher, that looks so bad when they're going around trying to find another job. You might end somebody's career firing a first year teacher over something minor. Now, I myself was fired at the end of my first year, and I was particularly screwed because the school I was fired from, not only did I do my first year of teaching there, but I did my long-term sub-experience there after I had graduated in college, and I had done my student teaching there as well. So it became very difficult for me to find another job as going into my second year of teaching, because every single person they could call for a education-related reference was the same principal that had fired me for willful disobedience of school policy, willful and repetitive disobedience of school policy and noncompliance with dress, refusal to do duties, blah, blah, blah. But here's the story behind that. I was working for a charter school in this area, and the charter school, I didn't initially have a room. They had me push around carts going into other people's rooms. But the room, they had a teacher quit on them halfway through the year, so inherited classroom. The classroom I inherited even when it was warm out, was very, very chill. Think, like the AC set at 72, but it's running constantly to push the temperature down to 72. So think like there's 65-degree air coming out of the vents trying to cool off the room. There's no thermometer in the room, so it's just running constantly as it's trying to hold the entire school building at that level. That room was frigid in the morning, absolutely frigid. And for whatever reason, this school didn't turn the air conditioner off. So the air conditioner would run even when it was 65 degrees outside, 50 degrees outside, and I'm in underneath the air conditioner in a room with no windows. And, you know, I've got kids in there that are, like 80, 90 pounds, native Floridians. You know, you've seen the meme of, it gets to be 70 in Florida and out come the parkas. That's a real thing. And these kids are cold. And here's a shot of the dog. So these kids are cold and they're bundled up in their coats and everything. And the school is expecting me to take their coats away from them because they want the kids to buy the school uniform coat. Well, the school uniform coat is $40. It's a thin little t-shirt material coat. It's not going to keep them warm. Even though kids who had those coats were shivering and shaking and at times, clearly it's not enough. And the population that this school was serving was, like working class families who, they're not going to be able to afford two or three of these $40 coats to, for the kid. They're going to have one and, trying to get them to bundle up. So yeah, maybe your solution is, well, maybe they should wear layers underneath their school shirts. And it's like, well, that's not really an option because kids grow. The shorts for the kids and the pants for them, the shorts were, I think, $25 for a set of uniform pants. The shirts were $20 each. The pants, the full length pants, not the shorts, were, I think, 30 each. And the sizes tend to run small, and the kids had to tuck their shirts in to not get in trouble. You have any extra weight on you, and, like, you're in agony tucking in shirts because you got things biting in. The kids are so uncomfortable. Like, this is, and it all comes down to this, is the school wanted them to pay the extra $40 for these coats. They didn't care whether or not the kids were warm enough. They just wanted the money from the extra coat sales. I could not find a way to justify taking coats away from kids that were shaking and shivering in the cold, and I refused to do it. It seemed inhumane to me. I'm a teacher. I'm there. If I'm cold, I put on my coat. And it just, as it became obvious I was not enforcing the dress code with the coats, administration started coming down to my room every couple of days and taking the kids' coats away from them because I wouldn't do it. And there you have it. There was my malicious and repetitive refusal to comply with school procedures and enforce school rules. I wouldn't take coats away from cold kids. And for that, all of my education references were with this principal who was pissed at me as I'm going on and putting out my resumes. Fortunately, I struck one principal. He was a grandfatherly fellow, a couple years in retirement. His office was full of old fishing equipment. He reminded me of my grandpa. Like I was talking with him about his, handmade fishing lures and everything on his desk. I apparently made quite the impression because he called who's now my current boss and made a recommendation that I be hired. Because with our district, when you log in and look at someone's application, you can see everywhere that they've submitted an application. And I touched the baby a little, even though I shouldn't. He's a cute one, isn't he? Yes, I touched the baby. So yeah, and my boss decided to give me a chance, and when he heard the story about what happened and why I had not been renewed, that's what really sealed me getting the job, because he's of a mind of me. You act in the best interest of the student, and sometimes there's something more important than the dress code or, the school's bottom line. which is what they really cared about. It wasn't about adherence with the dress code. It's because I was hurting their bottom line. Because figure 25 kids the first two periods that I'm not taking coats away from. It's $40 per kid. 50 times 40, $2,000 there that I was costing the school at least, maybe. You're not ever going to convince me that it wasn't about the money. Not with that particular charter school and the organization they work for. Anyone who has Rick Scott, anyone who insists on dragging their entire staff across the state to listen to Rick Scott speak and pat themselves on the back, spending millions of dollars in speaking fees, and yeah, just no, that was definitely all about the money. That was not about the best interest of the kids. And if those of you who don't know who Rick Scott is, he's the former governor of Florida, who is currently one of our senators, and he looks like a vampire. Looks like the Nosferatu guy from those old vampire movies, and he's the next thing to Satan. I don't say that lightly. I don't normally condemn people, but he single handedly was responsible for crashing the local economy here as he made backwater deals and dumped toxic sludge essentially down our Caloosahatchee River and ended all of our fisheries. Um, the guy's very bad business, very bad news. Do not like him at all. Getting sidetracked, getting back on it. So, I, as a first year teacher, I was stubborn and, not compliant. This young woman who lost her job and probably is now, going to be struggling to find another one come next year or, trying to find employment now and make her bills happen. Um, Being a first year teacher, entitled to some leniency. The offense was not so bad. Definitely not something you fire someone over, unless this was like a repetitive thing with her, and then I could see the firing. So let me know what your thoughts are. I'll include a link to the news story, and yeah, again, hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. Much like to be able to put this onto a live feed and be more of a dialogue. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't, and let me know what your thoughts are about the situation with this young woman, this brand new teacher who lost her job um, through the misstep of taking a student conversation and turning it into her curriculum.